The air above Corellos shimmered with the quiet hum of crystal-powered transit orbs, their paths weaving like silent threads across the pale green sky. Below them stretched the alabaster city of Iridan, its spiraling towers glowing softly under the twin suns. It was a city of learning, of peace, of sanctuary, a reputation its inhabitants had held for centuries. But reputations, like stars, were only steady until something vast and violent moved too close. Viren adjusted the collar of his pale robe as he stepped onto the balcony of the observatory, eyes lifted to the sky. He wasn't the only one who had seen it. A streak of fire had slashed the heavens minutes ago, descending far too fast to be a meteor. Behind him, holographic instruments whispered to life, feeding data into the air in floating symbols. Not a meteor. An escape pod. He tapped the interface and watched as the trajectory stabilized near the Shard Canyons. Remote scanners caught glimpses of it skipping across the rocky terrain before embedding itself in a cliffside. No call for help. No beacon. Just impact, silence, and the faint pulse of a life sign. By the time Viren reached the crash site, Lia was already there. Her slender frame stood rigid among the rocks, silver hair billowing in the desert wind. She was rarely wrong in her instincts, and whatever had drawn her here had clearly not been chance. "It's human," she said quietly, not turning. Viren's heart dipped. "Are you certain?" "DNA scan confirms it. Male. Military markings. Injured, but stable." Her voice carried no judgment, but Viren felt the tension just beneath it. They both stared at the pod half buried in scorched stone. Earth was far. Too far for any ordinary traveler. And even farther, politically. Corellos had remained neutral for a reason, untouched by the expanding reach of the Earth Directorate and its relentless appetite for control. They had no quarrel with humans. But now a human lay here, unconscious, breathing their air. A hiss broke the stillness as the pod's emergency seal released. Steam curled upward. Viren stepped forward instinctively, hand raised in peace. The man inside blinked rapidly, his eyes flicking from face to face with soldiers' training, even through pain. His uniform was torn, dark with blood. A faint insignia remained on the shoulder, Earth's military crest, half-burned. "Name?" Lia asked gently. The man groaned. "Clark. Lieutenant Mason Clark." Viren exchanged a glance with her. Earth's Directorate had been hunting deserters with increasing ruthlessness. Harboring one wasn't just dangerous, it was potentially suicidal. "We need to get him out of sight," Lia said at last. They moved him through secret corridors beneath the observatory, past murals that spoke of open borders and shared knowledge, through quiet medical wings that had never known war. Clark faded in and out of consciousness during the journey, murmuring half-sentences about betrayal, fire, the massacre of a colony whose name Viren had never heard. They didn't need full clarity to understand what had happened. Clark had run from something, and Earth did not tolerate deserters, especially those who had seen something they weren't supposed to. When the High Council convened 2 days later, Viren stood at the center of the chamber, facing rows of robed elders. Lia stood beside him. A projection of Clark floated in the air, his face bruised but calm. "This cannot be our burden," said Elder Thavos, leaning forward. "If Earth learns we've sheltered him." "They will," Lia interrupted softly. "If they don't know already." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "He fled for a reason," she continued. "He was part of a unit sent to eliminate a colony. He refused. He escaped. That matters." "It doesn't matter more than our survival," said another elder. Viren's voice was quiet but firm. "If we surrender him, we become complicit. If we deny him, we deny who we are." The chamber fell into silence. The decision wasn't made with a vote. It never was. It settled slowly, an unspoken alignment. Compassion was a risk, but to live without it was a greater one. That night, a transmission arrived from Earth. It wasn't coded, and it didn't ask for negotiation. It was a declaration. To the governing body of Corellos. You are knowingly harboring a fugitive of the Earth Directorate. This is considered an act of treason under Galactic Accord 77B. You have 10 planetary cycles to surrender Lieutenant Mason Clark. Failure to comply will result in immediate enforcement and military occupation. This is your only warning. The message repeated. Then stopped. The skies changed the next morning. The calm shimmer of the atmosphere gave way to dark, unnatural clouds. Earth's ships appeared on the horizon, sleek, sharp black against the sky. Not in attack formation, not yet. But present. Watching. Waiting. Clark stood by the observatory window, arm in a sling, eyes fixed on the growing fleet above. I warned you, he said quietly. You did, Viren replied. You can still give me up. Buy yourselves time. Maybe they'll believe you were tricked. Leah turned from her console. That would make us liars. And cowards. He looked at her, something passing through his eyes, relief, maybe, or guilt. I didn't run to survive, he said. I ran because I couldn't be part of it anymore. Viren said nothing. He didn't need to. The conflict wasn't in the sky yet. It was here, now, in every quiet decision, in every line the Corellians chose to cross or not. And Earth was watching. Outside, the warships loomed closer. Inside, the choice had already been made. The Earth fleet arrived without fanfare. No warning shots, no negotiations, only silence and shadow. Dozens of vessels slipped into Corellos's upper orbit like knives between ribs, their matte black hulls swallowing light. From the capital of Iridan, the sky looked wounded, veined with flickering contrails and distant glimmers of propulsion burns. Panic had not yet gripped the streets, but it hung in the air like static. Everyone felt it. Everyone knew. Inside the observatory, Viren watched the tactical readouts projected above the circular table. Each ship displayed no ID tags, no transmission codes, only the designation Earth Directorate, Enforcement Unit 3. Clark stood at his side, jaw tense, arms crossed. They didn't come to talk, Clark said. They came to remind you what silence sounds like before a hammer drops. Leah entered the room, her voice soft but urgent. We've received a message. Private channel. It's from someone claiming to represent General Avon Corps. Clark's breath caught for a second. Corps here. Leah nodded. He's in orbit. Wants a face-to-face. No intermediaries. Corps doesn't negotiate, Clark muttered. He delivers ultimatums. Then we should listen, Viren said, calm but firm. Even an ultimatum is better understood face-to-face. They met under the wide dome of the sky chamber, its translucent ceiling offering an uninterrupted view of the ships above. General Avon Corps appeared in holographic form, tall and broad, draped in a dark uniform etched with red insignia. His presence filled the space, even though he wasn't physically there. His expression was flat, somewhere between indifference and amusement. I admire your restraint, he began, his voice smooth and clipped. Most worlds panic. You're composed. Noble, even. You've come for Clark, Leah said without ceremony. Corps offered a faint smile. He deserted during a critical operation. Killed 2 officers, fled with sensitive data. He is a threat to Directorate security. Clark bristled. They ordered the extermination of a civilian colony. I refused. The officers weren't killed. They tried to sedate me for disobedience. I escaped. Your version is irrelevant, Corps replied, still smiling. Your very presence on Corellos is an act of aggression. We sheltered a wounded man, Viren said. That's not aggression. That's compassion. Compassion, Corps echoed, tasting the word. A beautiful luxury. But luxuries require security. Power. You don't have either. Not compared to us. He leaned slightly forward. This is not a negotiation. You have 8 cycles left. Return him or be categorized as a hostile protectorate. We will respond accordingly. The transmission ended without further pleasantries. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Clark exhaled. He won't wait 8 cycles. That's a formality. He's already planning the incursion. Lia turned to him. What would happen if they take you? I'd be executed in orbit, then paraded across Directorate networks as a warning. And if we fight back? He looked at her. Then your people die. Kor's fleet can glass a hemisphere in minute. He's done it before. The next morning, 2 Directorate drones descended into Corellian airspace and hovered over public squares, projecting synchronized broadcasts of Kor's address. It was calculated, polite on the surface, terrifying underneath. The message was simple. Earth had the right to enforce its laws, and any obstruction would be met with swift, decisive action. Images of past enforcement campaigns played on loop. Scorched cities, subjugated populations, rebels being dragged through the mud in shackles. Corellos was watching. All of it. Viren walked the city later that day. He saw the faces, hope dimming, confusion spreading. He overheard whispers in cafes, corners, beneath the archways of knowledge temples. Some spoke of turning Clark in quietly, sacrificing one life to spare millions. Others condemned the thought, invoking the old tenets, to shelter the displaced, to protect the vulnerable, even when it brings risk. In the council hall, that tension became shouting. We are not equipped to defend ourselves, a senator snapped. This is not defiance, it is suicide. If we surrender him, we surrender who we are, another replied. Today a deserter, tomorrow our own. The split was sharp. One faction demanded submission. Another called for secrecy and resistance. A third, smaller group, the most dangerous, suggested bargaining. Turn Clark over, but extract terms, trade deals, guarantees, time. Viren listened, heart heavy. Clark had not asked to be saved. Yet he had become the weight of their choices. That evening, Lia found Clark alone, seated in the inner gardens, watching the artificial moonlight drift across the stones. They're going to break apart over this, he said without turning. Maybe, she admitted. I should have died on that colony. It would have been simpler. She sat beside him, close but not touching. Simpler, but meaningless. You were meant to survive. He shook his head. I'm not a cause. I'm a warning label. You're a mirror, she said. You showed us what Earth became. And now we must decide what we'll become in response. Clark turned to her, something flickering behind his eyes. I can't let you burn for this. Lia reached out, gently placing her hand on his. We won't burn. We'll choose. Outside the city, Earth's fleet moved. Dropships adjusted their orbit. Ground units began quiet positioning exercises near the edges of Corellian territory, far from civilian zones but unmistakable in intent. A posture of readiness, they called it. But everyone knew what that meant. The Directorate did not bluff. Viren returned to the observatory and called up every archive he could access. Military histories, Earth battle doctrines, accounts of enforcement operations. There were patterns, always patterns. Earth never attacked without full-spectrum dominance. They never moved before the target world had been destabilized from within. Psychological disruption always came first. And that's what they were doing now. Let the people unravel. Let the leaders turn against each other. Then arrive as the inevitable solution. The realization hit him like a sudden chill. The war had already started. No bombs. No blood. Just fear. Spreading like smoke. He stood in front of the viewport, watching as the stars disappeared one by one behind the silhouettes of waiting ships. There would be no more delays. Kor wouldn't wait until the final cycle. He didn't need to. Because Earth didn't conquer with brute force alone, they conquered by offering peace to those too tired to keep resisting. And Corellos was growing tired. Clark stood on the upper deck of the Iridan Command Spire, the wind tugging at his jacket, his gaze fixed on the shifting horizon. The Earth fleet was no longer simply watching. Low-orbit thrusters hissed across the sky in wide arcs, signaling repositioning maneuvers. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The ships were closing in. Below him, the once serene city moved with a new rhythm, tense, clipped, reactive. Shuttles scurried between districts. Evacuation routes were quietly tested. Military drones skimmed low across rooftops, their engines low and constant. Corellos was not a world designed for war, but its people weren't naive. They understood pressure, and they understood posturing. Clark descended into the council chambers, just as Liao was finishing a private transmission. She turned as he entered, her eyes tight with worry. "We just lost access to one of our outer satellite relays. It's been disabled." "Sabotage?" he asked. "Or intimidation," she said. "Either way, they're cutting off our vision piece by piece." Viren entered moments later, his robe unfastened, hair damp from rain. "The Northern Prefecture has petitioned for an emergency referendum. They want to negotiate separate terms with the Directorate." Clark didn't respond immediately. The splintering had begun. Earth didn't need to fire a shot if entire regions chose to bend. "You still have time," he said. "Give me up. Let them have what they came for." Viren walked past him and placed a crystal data drive on the center table. "I had the defense grid reprogrammed this morning. It's old technology, but it can still target low-flying gunships." Clark blinked. "You're planning to resist?" "I'm preparing to exist," Viren said. "Whatever that means when a storm this large comes knocking." The chamber fell into a long silence before Liao finally spoke. "There's one option we haven't considered." She projected a star map in the air. The constellations shifted until a narrow green arc flared at the edge of the system. The Varellan Accord. A neutral treaty group. Small but recognized. They have a presence in the Alan corridor. Clark frowned. "You want to call in outside protection?" "If we join the Accord, the Directorate can't attack without triggering interstellar arbitration. They'd be forced to withdraw or risk open condemnation." "Condemnation won't stop Core," Clark said. "He'll just shift the narrative. Brand the Accord as sympathizers. Spin it into another justification for expansion." "Maybe," Viren admitted. "But it gives us a platform. A voice. And that's more than silence." A chime interrupted them. The wall panel lit up. An encrypted message. It was short. Clark read it twice. "Core has deployed infiltration unit. You have less than 40 hours before full planetary lockdown. J." He didn't say the name. He didn't have to. There were few people within the Directorate's intelligence network with both the access and the courage to leak a message like that. And fewer still who owed Clark their life. "We're out of time," Clark said. "If infiltration units are planetside, they're already destabilizing infrastructure. Communications, power, maybe even government officials. Or turning people," Liao said grimly. "The risk wasn't just betrayal from orbit. It was betrayal from within. That was Earth's true strategy, make trust itself a liability." By the next morning, the first attack came. Not from the sky, but from inside the administrative relay tower. An explosion tore through the eastern power matrix, knocking out long-range transmitters and disabling more than half the city's external defenses. 10 lives were lost, 30 more injured. No one claimed responsibility, but the nature of the breach made the message clear. They were no longer waiting for compliance. They were manufacturing chaos. Emergency meetings turned frantic. Delegates screamed across the council floor. Civilian protests erupted at the Western Gate. Some demanded peace at any cost. Others begged for weapons. All of it collapsed into noise. Viren stood in the center of the storm, unmoving. He turned to Clark. Would they accept a decoy? Clark narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? If someone presented themselves as you. Enough resemblance. Enough distraction. They'd scan for biosignatures. It wouldn't hold. Liao stepped forward. But it might buy us time. Even hours could be enough, Viren added. To get a signal to the Accord. To secure witnesses. To expose what's happening. Clark exhaled slowly. You'd risk one of your own people posing as me? Viren looked at him, voice low. We've already risked everything by letting you live. The plan was set into motion by midnight. A Corellian operative, Jel Tevin, a former planetary envoy with human linguistic training, volunteered for the impersonation. Augmentation tech was rushed from the medical wing. Facial reconstruction overlays were calibrated, voice modulations encoded. Jal didn't hesitate, even when told there was a high chance he'd be executed before anyone discovered the truth. He deserves to know, Jal said to Clark in private, that someone still chooses honor over obedience. At dawn, the decoy was transported under covert escort to the abandoned Helion trade port, a location chosen precisely because it offered no defenses. A public broadcast was made. Earth's fugitive was being surrendered in the interest of peace. The trap was set. 2 hours later, Kor's fleet moved. Dropships descended in waves. Fighters swept across the upper atmosphere, scanning for resistance. The Directorate believed it had won. Then the data burst transmitted. A full-spectrum signal beamed from Iridan's central node, transmitted across hidden relay chains into the Aelan corridor, and from there, to the Varellan Accord's core archive. It contained classified documents Clark had smuggled out months earlier, proof of Earth's illegal colony purges, of falsified reports, of civilian extermination orders signed by Directorate Command. It was all there. Names, locations, visual records. And it was live. Every neutral system now knew. Every broadcast that Earth didn't control was echoing the same story. The Directorate is not enforcing peace. It is waging quiet war. Within minutes, the Accord responded. A formal declaration was issued. Corellos is now under protective observation by the Varellan Accord. Any hostile action from the Directorate will be treated as an act of interstellar aggression. The words did not stop the descending fleet. But they changed everything. Because now the world was watching. The war did not come in fire or fury. It came in hesitation. For the first time in decades, the Directorate hesitated. Earth's fleet hung over Corellos like a poised blade, yet it no longer moved with impunity. After the Varellan Accord issued its declaration, something shifted in the calculus. Direct assault was no longer a quiet solution. It would become a broadcast war. Every action recorded. Every civilian casualty tallied. Every imperial impulse laid bare before a watching galaxy. And Kor hated being seen. Still, no one believed the danger had passed. General Avon Kor was many things. Tactician, enforcer, symbol, but above all, he was patient. He would not retreat without attempting some final measure. He didn't understand defeat. He only postponed victories. On the surface, Corellos braced. The Council moved operations into deep core facilities. Civilians were relocated underground in quiet waves. Decoys took the place of officials in public. The outer cities went silent, their lights dimmed, comms scrubbed clean. The world held its breath, not waiting for salvation, but preparing for siege. Clark knew that feeling. He'd seen it on other worlds. But Corellos wasn't like them. The people didn't collapse into chaos. They didn't fall apart. They adapted. They resisted in small, deliberate ways, by refusing fear. Lia led coordination efforts with the Accord's diplomatic channel, ensuring the data bursts were replicated and archived on secure interstellar node. Viren, though rarely visible now, remained the quiet center of resolve. Each morning, he issued a single sentence on public broadcast, never more. Words like, "This planet shelters the truth," or, "They fear what cannot be erased." It wasn't rhetoric. It was warning wrapped in calm. Then came the turning point. A Directorate gunship, veering off its orbital patrol, descended into restricted Corellian airspace. Its signature masked until the last second, it landed near the outskirts of Sivlin Ridge, far from sensors. But it wasn't stealthy enough. A patrol drone caught it. By the time Corellian forces reached the site, the ship was empty. No crew. No distress beacon. Inside, a single containment unit. Sealed. Biometric locked. They brought it to Iridan. Clark stood beside the chamber as engineers carefully opened it. The locking mechanism hissed, depressurizing with a slow groan. Within, under layers of thermal shielding, lay a device unlike anything Corellos had produced. Lia scanned it, expression darkening. It's a kill signal processor. A remote execution module. It's keyed to your DNA. Clark's stomach dropped. They sent it down quietly, she continued. No warning. Just this. It was meant to look like a failed retrieval, Viren said, stepping closer. But what it really is a message. They can't touch me publicly, Clark murmured. So they try to kill me off stage. Quiet. Untraceable. They failed, Lia said. They failed this time, Clark replied. But they won't stop. The discovery changed the tide, not militarily but morally. When the device's existence was revealed to the Accord, the narrative sharpened. Earth wasn't just applying pressure, it was attempting covert assassination under diplomatic watch. Accord investigators arrived within hours, demanding unrestricted access to orbital logs and communication trails. The Directorate stonewalled. And that, finally, broke the illusion. Within the span of a day, 2 border systems announced formal withdrawal from Earth's jurisdiction. Several others began public deliberations. Protests erupted on faraway colony world. Not massive yet, but growing. The Directorate's monolith had cracked. Core responded with silence. Not retreat. Not diplomacy. Silence. Until his voice returned, sharp and public, in a broadcast no one expected. People of Corellos, you were not the target. You were the witness. And you chose sides. The screen shimmered, revealing footage from months earlier, Clark's escape from Earth's military tribunal. Recut. Distorted. It showed him firing first. It omitted the civilians. It replaced orders with chaos. The broadcast ended with Core's voice cold as iron. Your protection of a war criminal is complicity. Your future depends on what you do next. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted again. Truth had always been the battleground. But now Earth fought with illusion. Disinformation spread rapidly across neutral network. Clark's past was rewritten in real time. Holograms fabricated quote. Edited footage created contradictions. 1,000 versions of events circulated. For every truth Corellos broadcast, Earth offered 10 lies. It wasn't about facts anymore. It was about fatigue. We can't match them, Lia admitted one night, watching a disinformation matrix unravel on the display. They flood faster than we can correct. Then we don't try to correct, Clark said. We reveal the pattern. Show how they lie, not just what. So they built a mirror. A live-stream archive. Open access, decentralized, protected by Accord protocols. It didn't tell people what to believe. It showed them the mechanism of distortion. Side-by-side comparisons. Timeline cross-references. Audio analysis. And at the center of it all, not Clark's face, but Core's voice, repeating itself, contradicting itself, unraveling in real time. The effect wasn't immediate, but it was undeniable. When the next Earth assault came, a data breach targeting Corellian water supplies, it wasn't just Corellos that responded. 6 Accord worlds issued joint condemnations. Emergency sanctions were passed. Earth's trade lanes narrowed. For the first time in decades, the Directorate faced coordinated resistance. Still, they didn't retreat. Core sent one final message. To Clark. Private. I taught you loyalty. You chose weakness. They will not protect you forever. Empires do not fall to noise. They fall to knives. Clark stared at the words for a long time. Then he deleted them. That night, he stood atop the observatory's spire once more, watching the stars reclaim the sky. Earth's fleet was still there. Still vast. Still dangerous. But the silence no longer felt like suffocation. It felt like distance. Lia joined him quietly. He turned. I used to think running was the only way to live. But maybe standing still is harder. Maybe that's why it matters. She smiled faintly. Core wanted you dead before the galaxy could hear your voice. But now they've heard it. And they're listening. Below them, Iridan pulsed with quiet light. Not triumphant, not safe, but unbroken. And far above, in the cold, dark orbit, the fleet waited. Not descending, just watching. Because now Earth was no longer the only force writing the story.